Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. And please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Here.
Ms. Cramiller?
Here.
Mr. Miller? Here. Mr. Liverman? Ms. Butler is absent. Mr. Simon?
Here.
Mayor Lampert?
Here. And now please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everybody tonight, and a special welcome to all of the chairs of our volunteer boards and commissions and committees. I know we would not be able to do our work up here without all the great work that goes on all of our boards and committees, so thank you. Tonight's meeting is a first, and I'm really excited actually for the format tonight. So we're going to hear short reports from all of our chairs, and the idea is to get a snapshot of some of the highlights from this past year and put some items in council's mind as we are going to be setting our priorities for 2015. So things that are important to be on your agenda, that should be on our agenda. And I've also asked the chairs if there's anything that you think you might need from council, either council action or anything else from council in 2015, that you also let us know about that this evening. We have quite a few presentations tonight. And there's actually going to be one more. So we have 17 presentations. So we're not going to be getting into long discussions with any of the boards, even though I'm sure we could probably find interesting things to talk about. So I might cut off discussion, and if there's something that is important enough to come back to council, we'll schedule it either for later this year or for next year if we need to have you come back. But this is really just to get a snapshot of all the work that's going on, and I know it's going to be useful for us. I hope it's useful for all of the chairs to get a sense of what everybody else is working on that might touch on your area, and also for anybody watching from home or anybody here who might be interested in volunteering and serving, to give you a sense of what board or committee or commission is working on issues that are of interest to you and something that you might want to help the town with. So with that, we are going to start with any comments from the public on anything that's not on tonight's agenda. Okay, seeing none, we'll dive right into it. And we do have one report that wasn't on the agenda, but I'm going to ask Bob Gregory from our local emergency planning committee to give us a brief report on what that committee has been up to.
This is easier. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. For some that don't know, back on July 8th, 2013, by resolution, the newly consolidated Princeton formed out of an emergency planning task force, the local emergency planning committee. In the packets that were handed out, the reports in the back, and on the front are the committee members. I won't bother reading them off. You can look at them and see who is on our committee. But today I'm going to give you a short snapshot of our mission and some of the things we've been working on for almost the last year and a half, and some of the accomplishments and partnerships that we've completed and built. So the Planning Committee has worked to foster partnerships with local, state, and federal resources. We have a very good relationship with community members as well as our county emergency management system. And we do this to improve community personal preparedness along with continuing to support emergency services through response, mitigation, fixing the problem, and recovery, which is coming back and recovering from things like hurricanes. So our committee accomplished the following. basically, we were charged with creating a plan, and we created an emergency operation plan, which is approved by the state of New Jersey. And we've also, in addition to that, have several working annexes, and an example of an annex is basically like a fire operation or an EMS plan, where it gives specifics about what the fire department and emergency medical services do during an emergency. We've built some great partnerships with the university. They're part of our emergency planning committee and emergency operations center when we open it, and we look to continue to cultivate that, as well as partnerships with our emergency responders, which is fire, first aid, and police. And most importantly, what I think some people don't see is the relationship we have with departments within, like engineering, public works, and also IT, our information technology, they are a wealth of support and help when an emergency hits, and do a lot of things behind the scene to support the emergency planning process. We basically have started a CERT team, Community Emergency Response. We're in the infant stages, if you will, so there's more to come on that, but that is a group of volunteers from the community who go through training and can help during an emergency to do things like staff centers where people can come and get warm, cool off in the summertime, charge their electronic devices during storms. And these citizens are trained to provide basic medical needs, search activities for lost individuals, and the like. Training is done through the county, and more information will be coming out on that. We've had good partnerships with the health department, working with the latest Ebola situation and crisis we had in our country. Some other things that we have done is we've assisted in the planning of a hazardous material inventory. So the town is basically in compliance with Right to Know surveys, which help us to manage our own hazardous materials and stay within the legal ramifications of what we can and cannot do concerning that. And lastly, we've been exploring some different things with the hospital. As some know, we've become an island in a storm, and it's been a concern of the committee. So we've been working with some of the council members to look at other options, for medical emergencies during storms. And we've come up with a couple plans. One is we always have a medic unit in town. The other plan is we do have the rescue squad has a boat where we can get through water with patients to get them across town if we needed to get to the hospital, and also for rescue operations. And we also have a plan with West Windsor and the university and Princeton to keep Washington Road open to get out to Route 1 to access the hospitals during emergencies. Some of our goals going forward, one is we want to continue to build our partnerships and reach out to the community for their involvement. We are looking forward to working with the Red Cross regarding shelters and our health department. And we are also looking to have a bunch of items clarified from our emergency operations drill. This year we had training and a drill of our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and we have a list of things that came out of that. One example is enhancing IT and upgrading our Emergency Operations Center, the actual room we operate out of. And we do anticipate coming to council in the future, 2015, with some recommendations as well as some requests to bolster those efforts. So all in all, the committee has been busy, and we've had some great accomplishments, and we look forward to keeping our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to call up Scott Sillers from Citizens Finance Advisory Committee.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having us all. Just very quickly, as to what the CFAC has been up to over the last little bit over a year, I'd say 2013, 2014, our main activity has been to help you establish a set of financial policies that will help us conduct our affairs in a transparent manner. Not just, that the numbers are available, but they're available in a form that have some explanation behind them as far as where we've been and where we're going with the budgets. That we have agreed upon procedures in place to be followed, and that we, with that information, can understand the impact that our actions will have on our future financial condition. That's not only taxes, but it's the amount that we can spend on our roads, facilities, et cetera, and what our costs of debt is through our bond ratings. Specifically, the financial policies that you adopted at our recommendation was a budget timetable, surplus targets for our current fund of 15 to 20% of available fund balance, a debt policy, growing debt at no more than, so that debt service grows at no more than 1.5% per year, and a capital spending procedure and plans that are consistent with that debt policy. Going forward in 2015, I think that we've done a lot of the policy work. What we need to do is just, number one, is just finish that work up by cleaning up the capital planning process and documenting that a little bit better. Same with the financial policy. I think that if we can document that a little bit better, it will be easier for people to follow as kind of a scorecard going forward. In addition, we've been asked to help on a fair share analysis for our nonprofit institutions above and beyond Princeton University, and the ones that are already paying fair share contributions into the municipality. We, of course, will do another budget review and newsletter. We may want to do some benchmarking versus other municipalities on what best practices are. And then finally, other items as may be requested by council. Things of note in 2015 that you may want to have us look at. One that we've been kicking around for a while is, what are the long-term implications of next to near-term ratable growth in a community that's largely built out? What are the long-term implications for that to the taxpayers and to our budget and to our finances? How do we manage for that going forward? Is the downtown supporting our community financially, or is it on its own? Are we supporting it? And then finally, should we be doing more to market our town economically to potential newcomers for the benefit of the citizens and the taxpayers, as opposed to market it for the merchants, the downtown merchants, but as other towns they have economic development commissions or officers to make sure that if a corporation is coming to the area, that they consider locating in that town as opposed to another town. We have not really had an effort out there to make the case on why they should locate in Princeton, and thereby giving us the rateable base that community, that corporation would bring. They're already going to be impacting our roads and bringing their people in, and it may be a way to improve the quality of the commercial and corporate campuses that we do have. And that's it for us for 2015.
Thank you. And I just want to do a special thanks to Citizens Finance Advisory Committee. You're one of the groups that we rely on very heavily on council, and
Sorry,
help
I've
us
got one
make
more.
good.
And that's
Okay.
just who was on the CFAC, and the people, the volunteer members are on the left-hand side, the five of us, and one, Gary Pattison. Today was his last meeting, and we are looking for another member now. Sorry, Liz.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, next up is Wanda Gunning from the Planning Board.
Thank you. It's a privilege to address Mayor and Council on behalf of the Planning Board. 2014 began with a meeting of Planning Board officers and staff with Council President Miller and Mayor Lempert to establish priorities for the Planning Board and its committees: landscape, zoning amendment review, that mysterious committee known as ZARC, master plan, and minor subdivision, as well as for the planning office for the coming year. Tasks chosen were the continuation of the merger of the historic preservation ordinances and a Witherspoon Street corridor study. The latter was decided to be a task for planner Lee Solo, working with the council. The application load for 2014 so far has proved to be lighter than the previous year, with 11 full board meetings as compared to 20 in 2013. This is because 2013 included 5 meetings on the Avalon Bay application. As usual, half of this year's meetings reviewed site plans or requests to amend site plans. One evening meeting was scheduled as a workshop on the historic ordinance merger so that members of the public who could not attend the daytime meetings could be present. The Minor Subdivision Committee heard 3 applications in 2014. The Landscape Committee met 4 times and reviewed landscape choices and minor hardscape and architectural changes for Avalon Bay and for Princeton University's Arts and Transit neighborhood, as well as other smaller projects. The Master Plan Committee also met 4 times this year and continues to be a forum for a number of topics. Among other concerns, the Princeton School Demographic Study, the Textile Research Institute redevelopment, and front yard parking have been discussed. This committee will provide oversight on a transit study to be prepared by Princeton Future under the auspices of the Mass Transit Trust Fund. Beginning in December, the Master Plan Committee will experiment with late afternoon or evening meetings in an attempt to attract greater public attendance. For the Planning Board, the most memorable hearing was the return of the Institute for Advanced Study Faculty Housing Project to redraw the lot lines. This application had been heard by the old Regional Planning Board in 2011 and 2012, which meant that the Princeton Planning Board members who had not served on that board had to listen to tapes or read transcripts of 4 meetings, approximately 12 hours to qualify. Once again, the meetings attracted a large number of members of the public to speak on both sides of the issues involved. This application hearing ran to 2 sessions and finished after midnight on the second evening, perhaps a planning board meeting length record for Princeton. Ongoing projects include the anticipated completion of the historic preservation section of the new combined land use code and its adoption by mayor and council this year. This has been a cumulative effort by the Borough Historic Preservation Review Committee, the Township Historic Preservation Committee, and the Borough Historic Preservation Commission, together with ZARC and the chair of the Zoning Board. The merged administrative sections of the Land Use Code should follow in 2015, and work will begin on the Zoning Code. The Zoning Board of Adjustment has requested that changes be made to be included in the merged codes, and they will work with ZARC, the planner, and the zoning officer on this task. In consideration of questions raised during the combination of the historic preservation ordinances, the Master Plan Committee expects to begin a review of the listing of historic sites and properties in the municipality, which appear as an appendix in the master plan. The committee will continue reviewing open space areas that might be considered for conservation and will work with other groups to encourage the implementation of the Complete Streets policy incorporated in the revised circulation element of the master plan. There has been strong advocacy for adding a sustainability element to the master plan in the near future. At some future date, the Master Plan Committee will undertake a review of the entire master plan to remove references to borough and township and to consider the contents in comparison with the newly merged codes. And finally, after polling the board for items that might be flagged for council consideration, the following suggestions were made. First of all, improve the microphone system in the meeting room. A great deal of time is wasted trying to get the public and the board to speak clearly. To increase the budget to include hiring consultants to study future growth, preservation, and development. We have a very small staff of dedicated professionals. Outside help would enable us to undertake major projects in anticipation of Princeton's planning and zoning needs. 3, whatever happened to the plan to televise our meetings? The board generally approved the Advisory Planning Committee's suggestions to make the planning and zoning process more accessible through initiating online application filing and other innovations. I would like to thank the 9 members of the Princeton Planning Board for 2014. Cecilia Burge from the Environmental Commission, Julie Corpizzoli from the Historic Preservation Commission, Council Member Jenny Krummuller, Council President Bernie Miller, Tim Quinn from the School Board, Marvin Reed, who has chaired the Master Plan Committee, Mildred Trotman, Gail Ullman, who has chaired both ZARC and the Landscape Committee, and our alternate David Cohen, as well as the Planning Office staff, Lee Solo, Eileen Cutronio, and Carrie Phillip.
Thank you very much. And if you stay to the end, maybe TV30 can talk about televising the planning board meetings. Thank you. Next is Bob Altman from Chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee.
Forgive me, it will take me 1 minute to figure out how to work. Oh, I see where we are. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Lempert. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of Princeton's Traffic and Transportation Committee, which is frequently known simply as T&T. My name is Bob Altman, and I've been the chair of T&T since the departure of our founding chair, Anton Lanston, this past May. As you can see, we have 7 citizen members, 4 liaisons, and the ongoing assistance of 2 other senior staff from the engineering department. What do we do? Our description on Princeton's website presents our official function, within which are the seeds of the occasional tensions that we face, as working simultaneously to assist the mayor and council in reviewing traffic and transportation issues and promoting traffic and transportation issues within Princeton. Put another way, our assistance and advice comes from the perspective of traffic safety and transportation issues, and as such is sometimes received by council, which, looking from a broader perspective, may have reason not to agree with some or all of our recommendations. But if I've correctly understood our respective role, this is not only to be expected, but it's also a good thing and works well. Where do our issues come from? This list is of necessity incomplete in its specifics. Perhaps its greatest value is in suggesting that the issues regarding traffic and transportation in our community, am I causing feedback? A little bit lower. Okay, thank you. We'll have to have training for public presentations before the next ones. Its greater value is in suggesting that issues regarding traffic and transportation are ubiquitous and can and should be able to be raised by a variety of people in a variety of ways. While we do and can have a list of goals and priorities, about which I'll say a few things later, each citizen or resident in a neighborhood typically sees their local traffic issue as unique and one we should address, which of course it is, because being a local issue, it is their issue. This is no less true when we have existing information, experience, policies, or data from comparable streets or neighborhoods or from Princeton as a whole that may make our response to the local problem from time to time less responsive to the problem as perceived by the local residents as we or they may have hoped it would be. What's our process? As a citizen committee, we typically rely on the expertise of Princeton staff to help us understand what's feasible or legal or has been tried in similar circumstances and with what results. When the issue, particularly speeding or confusing signage on a particular street, involves a neighborhood, we typically try to meet with the neighbors to help us understand their perspective of what's wrong and how they'd like to see it fixed. Although the fact that we've listened carefully and heard their concerns does not always mean that we can provide the solution for which they're looking. Looking back at our agendas for 2014, I found literally dozens of issues that we've addressed. At or near the top of the list would be speeding and ways to control it, and parking, when, where, with what limits, and at what cost. In many cases, from a traffic safety or transportation perspective, there's one apparent solution. However, as these examples show, even in those cases, we often work within layered or overlapping areas of responsibility, which can make the decision-making and implementation process less simple than they might have appeared at first. Another example of a complex issue with which TNT deals arises from the request that we review 3 proposed road reconstruction projects in the context of Princeton's Complete Streets policy. The first project that we looked at was the reconstruction of Hamilton Avenue between Harrison and Snowden, and our first step, summarized on this slide, was to identify options. We found 5, and then to identify what advantages and disadvantages each option appeared to have. Finally, if we could, we were to, and did, recommend one of the options to Council, which will address the issue from its perspective early next year. One final example of the issues that we addressed in 2014 is the creation and adoption of a set of goals to guide our work in the future, which we've previously shared with the Mayor and with our Council liaison. This is the framework of broad issues on which we'll spend our time, along with the still and always evolving list of specific problems and suggestions that will come to us from across the community as the year progresses. Within those goals, we've also identified a list of specific targets that we hope to meet in 2015. And if our past work is any indication, we'll succeed in many, but not all of these, and many, if not all of them, will then result in some recommendation that will ultimately need consideration by Council. We look forward to continuing to work with you, and I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you have at this point.
Okay, thanks. I'm sure we'll have you back as these individual items come back up, but thank you very much. All right, next is the Pedestrian and Bike Advisory Committee with Chair Steve Cruz.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to come here in front of the council and do a little bit of bragging about our committee. Page 1, these are the 7 members of our volunteer committee. I think we are quite fortunate to have such an accomplished and energetic band of people working on the problems. We work to give advice to help promote bicycle and pedestrian transportation here in Princeton, and we were able to accomplish quite a lot over the past year. And I've been on the committee for 6 years, and I honestly think we had our most productive year in terms of the range and the kind of level of interest we got on many of the activities we undertook. First of all, we do run a number of public bike rides, or our events. We ran 3, which is more than we have ever done before. Starting in March, we actually had a collaboration with the organizers of Pi Day, and we ran a fairly interesting nighttime event to try to highlight bicycle safety and lighting, and in addition to celebrating Einstein's birthday. We then ran in May, which is Bike Month, under the energetic leadership of Lori Harmon, one of our committee members, an event called the Ciclovia, where we closed off Quaker Road to car traffic, and that is an event that we hope will sort of take root and happen on a recurring basis here in Princeton. And our final event was in October. We have a traditional ride which we call the Mayor's Ride of the Falling Leaves, which is just a nice outing that puts focus on Mountain Lake's open space area. Members of the committee are often asked to present to Sustainable Princeton or Princeton Future and explain what we're doing, what our strategy is, and what some of our important issues are, and we did that. In addition, Lori Harmon and myself were able to make a presentation. We were invited to make a presentation at the New Jersey statewide Bike Walk Coalition to basically explain the various steps that were taken for Princeton to get a bronze award in the bike-friendly community designation, which is something that happened during 2013. One of the important things that happened last year was we made a proposal which was accepted to the Mass Transit Trust Fund, and we were able to hire a cartographer who has been working on and is now close to completion of a bicycle map that will show all the different facilities and trails, and will be we think of quite important use for visitors to town who arrive and may want to rent bicycles at the new Dinky station, in addition to all the incoming students at both colleges, and generally in the outlying areas, West Windsor, and so that is an important thing that we're quite proud of. And something quite, one of our committee members is the parent of a child at Johnson Park Elementary. That's Lisa Seriasol, and she was able to get quite a bit of progress and participated in Bike to School Day in October. This is a national program called Safe Routes to School, which basically depends on grassroots support, which we've had a hard time getting, but we are finally trying to get some traction on the Safe Routes to School program, thanks to the efforts of Lisa. So we're quite proud of that accomplishment. Finally, and as sort of referred to by Bob just earlier, talking about the TNT committee, one of our members, Professor Sam Bunting, was very involved in the discussions of how to get the complete streets improvements made to certain street improvement projects, notably Hamilton Avenue, Mount Lucas, and Prospect Avenue. And that was a fairly time-consuming and detailed project, which we hope will come to fruition within the next couple of months. And in addition, we did quite a bit of outreach by way of social media, trying to build awareness and build a sense of community so that the bicyclists have a more, just generally building encouragement for the bicyclists. I should mention, well, we had a lot of highlights. We were not pleased by the low level of ridership at some of our events. I think in some cases the weather was a factor, especially in mid-March when it was not too warm, and we also had a hard time scheduling around various university study weeks and things like that. We would like to spread out our activities across the entire year. We had an action-packed 4-month period that was really kind of stretching us to the limit in terms of the types of, the amount of time we could put in. But on the whole, we had a very positive year. Finally, just my last slide here. One of the key things we're going to aim for is we are going to push very strongly for creation of a document called the Bike Master Plan that would, we think we are eligible for a kind of development grant from the New Jersey Department of Transport. We have a person at the Greater Mercer TMA who is willing to coach us through the process. And this document we think is necessary because it will then allow a lot of the, we would like to create what amounts to a playbook for each and every street so that when the street comes up for improvement or under discussion, we will know exactly what type of facility is required, which can be a complicated issue. It's kind of context sensitive, and we really think that a professional help is needed to create this document, which would then be appended to the master plan circulation element. So that is probably our #1 goal for next year. We are going to expand on this success at the Safe Routes to School program at the other elementary schools and continue with what was done and push further Johnson Park Elementary. We're going to put a focus on bicyclist and safety education by trying to study what best practices are in other communities and try to introduce some of those programs here in Princeton. We would like to move beyond our current status as a bike-friendly community and try to find activities that will get us the silver designation within the next couple of years. And in addition, finally the bicycle map, which is due to be published in paper form, we will try to make sure that the distribution of that is equitable and efficient, and we will be able to gather feedback so that if there is a second edition, it will contain corrections and input from the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a great report. Next up is Matt Wasserman, Chair of the Princeton Environmental Commission.
Good evening. Good evening, and thanks for having me here. So what's being passed out is just really what I'm going to read off here. It's kind of divided up into 3 areas: the 2014 recap, kind of what the PEC is looking at for 2015, and then kind of what I'll call council imperatives, which are some of the things the PEC has thought about that we really hope that you have a chance to discuss and potentially act upon next year. So from a kind of a recap perspective in 2014, I want to call it kind of a new beginning. If you take a look at the makeup of the PEC this year, besides myself and Heidi Fichtenbaum, who've been there for a little while, most of the other members of the PEC have been there for maybe 1, maybe 2 years at most. Some have only just started this year, but it's a great group of people. I hope that the turnover we had wasn't because of my poor leadership skills, but it really has been a good group of people and a very, very passionate group, as you'll kind of see as the topics that we discuss. I think one of the first things that I think is important to kind of reiterate or talk about is the fact that the PEC felt it was very important for us to kind of talk about who we are as an environmental commission. What are our rights? What are our roles? What do you as council want us to be? and what do we think we should be. And so we spent a lot of time discussing that this year, and I know you got more. I believe you received more than one, at least more than one memo from us in terms of some of those roles and responsibilities. But I think it'll go a long way to kind of keep preventing future application issues, which you've seen in the past, driving more commitment from the members of the PEC because they're happy with what they think they're there to do. And I think we've created some more tangible connections specifically to Sustainable Princeton and others. Clearly, one of the things that one of our roles is to talk about ordinances and resolutions, or to create them, or to at least draft them. And we drafted a few this year. One on anti-fracking, one on the Water Protection Act for the New Jersey Highlands, from which we get some of our drinking water, and inputting into the consolidated ordinances on housing and landscaping. As we do every year, there were clearly some development applications that we weighed in on, both with Avalon Bay and the proposed 7-Eleven site. I think one of our biggest accomplishments this year is the introduction of what we call the Leave the Leaves program. You'll see in 2015, it is one of our core pillars for what we want to concentrate on. But I do want to thank and recognize the staff here in Princeton, because without their help, without their commitment, without their partnership, it wouldn't happen. And it was great to get the reverse 911 call about leaves and have it say, hey, leaf pickup is this month or this week, but hey, leave the leaves if you can, because it's a better solution. So it was great to see that, and we really do appreciate it. We had our initial landscaper meeting. What we wanted to do as part of Leave the Leaves is to get feedback from many of the people who are actually raking up the leaves and doing something with them. We got a lot of great feedback. Unfortunately, it was only by 2 people. So we want to kind of do another one in the winter after when most of the landscapers aren't as busy as they were when we tried to have this first meeting. Create a lot of partnerships with the library and working with them on the Environmental Film Festival, on the stream cleanup, the annual stream cleanup with the watershed, and with multiple constituencies with both FERC and the pipeline. From a 2015 perspective, I think there's probably two main pillars that we really think about from a PEC perspective. We've talked about this a lot. One is waste, and one again is continuing with leaves. From a waste perspective, you'll see shortly a waste memo from the PEC, one that really speaks to all aspects of waste and how we think as a town we need to address it. Everything from what will the consolidated ordinance look like, to how do we deal with composting. Is it something that should be mandated or not? The bin dynamic. What size should your trash bin be versus what size should your compost or your recycle bins be? How often should things be picked up? A lot of it drives behavior, and you'll see that that's some of the things that we'll be talking about. Although we passed an anti-fracking ban, but we want to also ban an anti-fracking waste ban. So all the waste that comes about after fracking can it be dumped here in Princeton? Want to make sure it can't be. And then one-time use plastic bags. I think the election results were, I think, crystal clear here in Princeton. 2-1, people said, you know what, there's something, we really should be thinking about something other than just kind of handing out free plastic bags every time we go shopping. And whether that's a fee or eliminating them, still to be determined. But I think the beautiful thing about, although it didn't pass in Mercer County as a whole, Princeton 2-1 said, hey, it makes sense, and let's kind of be on the forefront of that. From a Leave the Leaves perspective, some next steps. We want to do another landscaper meeting, as I said, and we want to continue the education. We talked about Leave the Leaves, kind of maybe Leave the Leaves 2.0 was Love the Leaves. So, just something kind of a natural extension from that, educate, make sure folks know why we're doing it. And then a number of other pieces that you'll see in front of you that we're going to talk about that will have some type of environmental impact, whether it's a climate action plan. The Witherspoon Corridor has been in the paper a lot, so if we thought about that from an environmental perspective, we have a green building checklist. We'd like to talk about a green business checklist. Talk about affordable housing from an environmental perspective. And I believe there were some rain gardens that were that came up in one of our meetings as well from the town, and we want to make sure that those get installed. So in the back half of this is kind of what I'll call the council imperatives. And it's kind of the things that I think that the first one I would say is something that every commission and board that's up here probably I think probably feels the same way, and that's, I urge council to continue to move away from the status quo. We hear a lot, this is how we used to do it. When it was the borough and the township, I bought my house under these particular assumptions, or there might be a backlash if we do this. I think that, council has done a nice job in the last couple of years. I think kind of, pushing away from those, which is great, and we just, want to continue to see more of it, because I think every recommendation that comes before you from any one of these boards and commissions is because we're trying to make improvements. We're trying to, move away from the status quo. And I think that's important to keep in mind as we look to kind of build the future of Princeton. So, again, within imperatives, enforcement is one. There's a lot of ordinances already on the books. There's, part of, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If there's things out there that we're already supposed to be doing, how do we figure out how to enforce the ordinances already in the books, from leaves to recycling to green building checklists, whether it be an ordinance or just something that's there. Just how do we continue to educate people about it. Leave the leaves. I think, here is, I think, important for a council to kind of create a goal. It's great to talk about leave the leaves and waste, but I think, unless we create a goal, we're just going to kind of probably continue to talk about it for quite some time. So I urge council to create a goal when it as it relates to waste and to kind of the time and money spent on leaves and brush and things like that, because only with that goal in front of us, I think, will we have a chance to actually do something about it. And I think there's other things we can think about, incentives for landscapers and residents. I think, Councilman Liverman brought up a great point when it was the plastic bag issue about, the affordability of it, and, can everyone really afford that, the cost? And, I think the same thing has to be thought about here. We can't do it in a vacuum, but, we have to have the discussion, and we have to come back with something that works. And then, as you had in our Leave the Leaves initial recommendation, I think the spring is probably a good time to try a pilot. Let's pick a neighborhood. You don't have a ton of leaves in the spring, but you have some. Can we pick a couple of neighborhoods and say, we're going to try this Leave the Leaves in this neighborhood, see what happens, and kind of go from there, learn from it. And then the last thing is just kind of is on open space. I think we need a real plan for this. I know that open space was, put with rec, and I think that was probably a good start, but I think there was a lot of folks who believe that it's always going to play second fiddle to our rec department and to our active parks. And so just something to think about in 2015 and beyond is how we're really going to take care of our open spaces and kind of our passive parks. So that's it. Again, I appreciate the time today, and I really do thank the rest of the PEC that kind of helped me formulate this and works on this so hard. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. And next we have Sharon Ainsworth from the Shade Tree Commission.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm here to represent the Shade Tree Commission. I have with me my colleague and Vice Chair, Lily Kraus, and also in the audience is Victoria Airgood, one of our members as well. Just for those in the public who may not be aware of what the Shade Tree Commission does, our role is to advise the mayor and the council and the public and other members within the town agency about concerns relating to shade trees on public property and public rights-of-way, and in certain circumstances on private property. This year, our 7 members and 2 alternates contributed well over 500 hours of volunteer work, and that does not include all the great work that Jenny Cromiller, who's our liaison to the council, has also done with us. So it's been a very active year for us. We've had 3 major accomplishments. As you may recall, we have submitted to you the ordinance, the new Shade Tree Ordinance, back in June, which you very kindly made only minor changes to and approved in July. We also have been able to work through the process to have Princeton once again named as a Tree City USA. They didn't know quite how to deal with us because we, of course, being a new, quote, municipality, we did work through that process whereby the borough and the township's former status was recognized, and so we've gotten through that at the national level. We've also, the third accomplishment is we completed the necessary comprehensive forestry management plan that's required by the state for legal purposes. We've submitted that, and I learned just last week that we should get that final approval document to the mayor, should receive that this week, that we have been approved. So all that was in a lot of work, and as you can tell from the hours that we've spent, that it's been a very active year. I did want to bring, in terms of challenges in 2015, I did want to bring to your attention a key issue that we're facing, which is called, as an insect, called the emerald ash borer. It's a beetle native to Asia, and it was first discovered in this country in Michigan back in 2002. And in that short period of time, it has spread eastward and westward. We now unfortunately have found out that we do have it in New Jersey now. We were sort of the hole in the donut. We hadn't received that confirmation until just very recently. This emerald ash borer affects all ash trees. It's not selected by species. Generally, an insect will just go after one species or more within a genus. In this case, it attacks all ash trees. There have literally been hundreds of millions of ash trees killed since 2002. And we've been told by the federal USDA Forestry Service that once it's detected, if it's left untreated, it's 100% of the ash trees will die. Adding to that problem is the fact that ash trees, by their biological nature, once they die, they become very brittle, which makes it very hazardous for arborists in the removal. So clearly, this is a concern to us. We have the good fortune that, of course, you did fund us to have the tree inventory updated last year. And so we do have a good record of all of the street trees. We know that we have nearly 19,000 street trees, and of those, nearly 2,000 are, unfortunately, are ash trees. So basically about 9% of our street tree population are ash trees. So basically, what we know from what the feds have told us, and the state, DEP, and Department of Agriculture, that once the ash borer is firmly established in our community, we would expect to lose all of our ash trees within a period of 5 years. I should mention that nearly 2,000 trees does not include those in the public parks, because we do not have an inventory, unfortunately, of the public parks. So this is just the street trees. It, of course, obviously does not also include anything that's on privately held land as well. We were informed just last month by Greg O'Neill, our former arborist, who unfortunately has had a better opportunity and moved on. He did tell us last month that currently 80 of our ash trees are dead and need immediate removal, and there are another 305 either in poor or critical condition that need to be seriously looked at and probably removed sooner rather than later. We as a commission have begun preliminary discussions on developing a management plan for you to review, to address this pending crisis with the emerald ash borer. Our plan that we are discussing would include a public awareness campaign, a management proposal detailing the projected cost and logistics of removal of dead trees, the targeted treatment and removal of others, and equally important, replacement plantings. We'd also like to thank the mayor and council for the funds that you provided to do the street tree inventory. This vital information is going to help us immensely in managing the street trees, and in particular with the impending emerald ash borer problem. But I should also note that we do also need to look at an assessment of public parks, because certain parks we know have a fairly high percentage of ash trees in them. And again, we appreciate in conclusion the quick action that you've taken on seeking a replacement. I noticed that you have posted the arborist position. That's extremely important to us because, of course, staff support is vital to the Shade Tree Commission, and particularly given this pending additional challenge with the emerald ash borer. And as you know, public trees are certainly valuable to our community, not only for the aesthetics that they provide, but also for economic and environmental benefits. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Julie Cavazzoli, Chair of Historic Preservation. I think we're going to have her back.
Good evening. I'm Julie Capozzoli. I'm Chair of Historic Preservation for Princeton. And sorry, I'm sending out kind of a late document that you can sort of follow along with. First of all, I'd like to thank the council for hearing the report, and mostly I'd like to thank the members of the commission for the hard work that they've put in all year. Our liaison, Joe Butler, deserves great thanks, and also Robert Funzumbush, Elric Endersby, David Shore, Celia Tazalar, Catherine Gowan, Roger Saskin, Shirley Satterfield, and Harold Kuskin. So they've all been very great about coming to meetings, and we've had a lot of work to do. I would especially like to thank Christine Lewandowski. She's been the Historic Preservation Officer for Princeton for 25 years, and her last day was today. So we will miss her very much. She has been the foundation of the commission for the last 25 years. And we are really excited about working with Elizabeth Kim going forward. She's very capable, and we know that she can guide us through the new challenges. So in summary, this is like on page 2. I sent out information that's a lot more detailed on the applications, but we had 53 applications for historic preservation. We were able to handle 32 of them administratively, which may help you understand how we are really trying to assist owners in historic areas if their changes are simple. The applications that came before the commission, of those, 3 were single-family homes needing preservation plans. 6 involved preservation plans with variances, including use variances. There were 2 concept reviews, and then we had 9 reviews involving either the State Preservation Office or Section 106 reviews. And so since we meet only once a month, these were pretty busy meetings. Of those, we had 16 from the Central Historic District, 13 from the Mercer Hill District, 7 from the Princeton Battlefield Stony Brook Settlement District, 5 from the Kings Highway, 4 from Jugtown, 3 from Tusculum, 2 from Bank Street, 1 from the Jolene Gulick property, 1 from the Donald Herring Estate area, and then 1 that involved several districts. And I just want to remind everyone that Princeton does have 18 historic districts. And I've got a list in here just for your reference. So we do have a few. Historic preservation really is a challenge because obviously things can't stay the same in an historic town that's changing and growing rapidly. So our task is to create a balance to protect our historic resources that benefit our entire community and to allow for changes that also benefit our citizens. We work very hard to help the applicants make this process a positive exchange of ideas so that the optimum outcome is achieved. We have many many challenges, but I think that this quote is very apt. It's from William Murtaugh, the first keeper of the National Register of Historic Places. And he said, it has been said that, at its best, preservation engages the past in a conversation with the present over a mutual concern for the future. So we have approved projects on Nassau Street, Witherspoon Street, Mercer Street, Dickinson, Stockton Street, Princeton-Kingston Road, Alexander Street. So really we deal with properties all over town. In addition, we have been working very hard since consolidation, and actually before consolidation, we had a subcommittee working with the borough's HBRC and the township's HPC together to come up with the historic preservation ordinance. And we're very pleased that that was introduced to council a couple meetings ago, and we are very pleased that the will be present on December 8th for the discussion, and I believe many members of the HBC and public will be here for that. That's been a challenge. That's been a long process, and I think we'll hopefully be able to work with one ordinance going forward. We are also working on two projects. One is sustainability guidelines for historic preservation. And there's been a lot of publications recently about historic preservation and sustainability. A lot of people say if you want to get the greenest building, just look for ones that are already there. It's a challenge because this is a fairly new idea, but there are communities like Nantucket in Massachusetts that have come up with really brilliant guidelines for sustainability. And so we're drawing from there, and we're drawing from the new literature, and we're trying to put those guidelines together. In addition, there's also a guidelines for the Kings Highway, which is an early 18th century route that goes from Charleston, South Carolina to Boston. And it's a nationally recognized historic route. And we are working on guidelines on the part of the route that goes through Princeton so that things like fencing and anything that's sort of towards the road can be regulated. The DOT has sort of thrown up their hands and asked us to deal with it. And so we have hired a consultant, and we are in phase 1 of that work, and hopefully that will be finished sometime next year. In addition, we do have a lot of applications coming up for 2015, I'm sure, including neighborhoods that, groups that wish to nominate different neighborhoods for local historic designation. And so we are an extremely busy commission, and I rely heavily on staff and on our members to be present and work. So we're looking forward to the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. I lost my spot. Next up is David Goldfarb. He's going to talk about a different kind of sustainability from the Sewage Authority.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of the Stony Brook Regional Sewage Authority, and I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year because today is the first day of Stony Brook Regional Sewage Authority's fiscal year, which means that we can report, although on a somewhat preliminary basis, that we are going to be refunding $190,000 plus to Princeton for the current fiscal year, and we'll be reducing our charges to Princeton by $58,000 in the next fiscal year, and those numbers should show up in your 2015 budget. I should explain to those of you who don't know that Stony Brook provides sewage treatment not only to Princeton but also to South Brunswick, West Windsor, Hopewell, Pennington, and parts of Plainsboro and Hopewell Township. We work in close coordination with the Princeton Sewer Operating Committee, which is the agency that collects the sewage in Princeton and delivers it to the 3 pump stations that then take it to Stony Brook. I should point out that a significant portion of the refund that I just spoke about is directly attributable to Princeton's success in reducing extraneous flow from the sewer system. We are now sending to Stony Brook less than half of the flow that we sent in 1993. It's 21 years ago. When you consider all of the development that took place, the expansion of Princeton University, which is part of our system, it gives you some clear idea of how successful we've been in reducing extraneous flow. And it's taken a coordinated effort, and it's taken a substantial amount of money. So even though Matt Wasserman said that nobody is going to be up here arguing for the status quo, I'm arguing for the status quo because I want to maintain that kind of commitment. It's necessary over a long period of time. And I would just point out that even in the past fiscal year, during 2014, in October, on a daily basis, Princeton sent 2.3 million gallons per day to Stony Brook. In February, on a daily basis, we sent 4.8 million gallons per day, more than twice as much gallonage per day, all attributable to extraneous flow that with substantial effort can be removed. And so we need to continue that effort over a long period of time, not only because, just like roads and other infrastructure, it needs to be maintained, but because we get a direct financial benefit from reducing the extraneous flow, and we save energy and chemicals and all kinds of other things that are beneficial for the environment. So I strongly encourage us to maintain that commitment. I would also point out a couple of other things. I know some of us may be old enough to remember that in the late 1980s, Stony Brook had proposed to begin a program of incinerating sludge on a contract basis with other sewer authorities. And there was a lot of concern, particularly among people who lived in that part of town, about the impact that that would have. I would point out the following. In the 6 years that ended in 2013, that program has provided a net income of $7.5 million, of which Princeton gets roughly a third. And we've done it with relatively little impact on the neighbors. By investing in programs to reduce odors, we've significantly reduced the number of odor complaints that we've gotten from neighbors in Princeton and in Montgomery. And I would also mention that some of that revenue recently has come from Bayshore Regional Sewerage Authority, whose incinerators were knocked out as a consequence of Hurricane Sandy. So it's true that it's truly an ill wind that blows no good. We benefited from their misfortune. So I think what I bring you is mostly good news and a hope that when Bob Huff comes to you and says that he needs significant money to repair leaky sewer pipes, you'll be receptive. It's not something that anybody else in Princeton, except those of us who care deeply about the sewers, are ever going to mention to you. But it's something that everybody will benefit from. And you can really feel that you're doing your bit, not only for the taxpayers, but also for the environment. Thank you.
Thanks, David. You speak more passionately about the sewers than anybody. It's wonderful. Charles Rosary, Chair of the Board of Health.
Thank you. Mayor Lempert, President Miller, members of the Princeton Council. 2014 has been a very exciting and eventful year so far for the Princeton Health Department and the Board of Health, and it promises to continue to be so. But the excitement really began in 2013 with 1, the departure of our former health officer, Dave Henry, 2, the fortunate availability of Robert Harry to stand in, but only as an interim health officer, 3, the onset of an epidemic, 8 cases, of meningitis in students on campus of Princeton University, complicated by A, the finding of an unusual serotype in the offending organism, B, no U.S. experience with this meningitis bacterium, C, no treatment experience in the U.S. and no approved vaccine available here, D, the need to coordinate plans for confronting this disaster involving the University Health System, Princeton Health Department, New Jersey Department of Health, and the CDC, E, the need to use the experience of the European Union for both the therapeutic planning and the use of vaccine not yet approved in the U.S. With a massive effort on everybody's part, a campaign was launched to educate and propagate safe behavior and preventive measures and mount an immediate vaccination for all Princeton undergraduates. Fortunately, the response from the students on campus was outstanding, and the epidemic came under control. Unfortunately, a couple of months later, a young co-ed from Drexel University did come down with the disease after coming in close contact with a Princeton student, in spite of his having taken the vaccine, and succumbed to the disease within 3 days. All these events straddled the end of 2013 and spilled into 2014. The beginning of 2014 brought about my election as chairman of the board. Soon to follow came the search for a new health officer, with interviews of several excellent candidates and the final selection of Jeffrey Grosser. He brought with him wide experience at managing personnel, having overseen a large number of employees at the Burlington County Health Department. Working as the program manager for the Division of Disease Prevention and Control, Jeffrey was in charge of communicable disease, mosquito control, and the animal shelter. Mr. Grosser also brought with him an extensive environmental health background that has proved useful with the ongoing hospital demolition project. Though he had his health officer's license, he was not functioning as a health officer in his previous position. Fortunately, through the approval of the administration, town council, and Mayor Lempert, we were fortunate in having access to Mr. Bob Harry for consultation to ease the transition. Jeffrey profited from Mr. Harry's contacts in Mercer Health, which he was able to pass on to him. As a new health officer, Jeffrey Grosser has faced many challenges. One, he used his vast reservoir of energy and enthusiasm to reach out to other organizations involved in improving the health of our community: Human Services, WICS, Princeton Senior Resource Center, Princeton Public Schools, and surrounding municipalities. Two, he collaborated with Princeton University Health Services in overseeing the administration of the meningitis booster vaccine injection to students. Three, he joined our town engineer, Robert Kaiser, in weekly inspection tours of the Princeton Medical Center Hospital deconstruction by Avalon Bay, and provided additional expertise in noise and air pollution control. Four, he worked with WICS clinics to help reverse the diminishing client attendance and restore the valuable pre- and postnatal care available to Princeton's most vulnerable residents. Five, with input from the board, he provided oversight of the response to the Ebola crisis, including the voluntary and later mandatory quarantine of local residents with exposure to Ebola. Six, during the Ebola quarantine period, the necessary involvement of our part-time public health nurse crystallized the need for additional availability of her services to Princeton. The importance of cooperating with the New Jersey Health Commissioner and other local and regional health officers and health departments became evident. And seven, the Board of Health, through our liaison with the PEC and Sustainable Princeton, our liaison being Steve Miller, was able to respond cooperatively to common concerns such as noise and air pollution, the ban on smoking, including e-cigarettes, and the diminishing use of single-use plastic bags. The focal points for the end of 2014 and the new year include 1. Continuing strategic planning. 2. Seeking formal national accreditation for our health department. 3. Seeking additional hours or a full-time public health nurse to increase Princeton's capabilities with disease outbreak investigations and community health screenings. Surrounding municipalities benefit greatly from having a full-time public health nurse. As seen with the Ebola situation, a public health nurse was needed every day to assist with monitoring patients. Additionally, health screenings are important to continue protecting the health of our Princeton residents. 4. Coordinating emergency planning and preparedness in conjunction with Bob Gregory. 5. Coordinating and cooperating in activities with our 2 regional hospitals. And 6. Promoting health in all policies. Respectfully submitted.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to invite up Alvin McGowan, who's chair of our Affordable Housing Committee. And Kate Warren, who's the vice chair.
And my technical assistant.
Who's not so technical?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alvin McGowan, and I am the chairman of the Affordable Housing Board. I'd first like to thank the council for having us tonight, and also mention that there are quite a few members of the board that are here tonight, and also say that I am pleased to be the chair of this board. It's actually a very, very good and dedicated collection of people that you have there. And hopefully the council will take advantage of the knowledge and the dedication as it looks forward to the affordable housing goals. We have is slide 1. There's a total of, currently, 914 affordable housing units. That is from all sources, not just from COA sources. You see it's broken down between 440 COA units credited and 474 non-COA credited units. That'll increase to 1,206 with the completion of Stanworth, Merrick Phase 1 and 2, and Avalon Bay. Our 2014 highlights. We've been working very diligently to harmonize 2 disparate ordinances, the borough and the township ordinance into one. We've been drafting new boards, rules, and regulations. We've approved funds to purchase the mortgage for a foreclosed housing unit, approved court action to ensure that a vacant housing unit remains in the affordable inventory. I think most importantly, we've been able to recapture $345,000 for the housing program in the resale of affordable housing units. There has been participation in community and educational outreach. The neighborhood meetings. There was a League of Women Voters meeting. Now in our town, affordable housing. We have participated in workshops for home ownership and for the application process. And we've identified 5 additional potential acquisitions for affordable housing. As far as 2015, Again, to finalize our new rules and regulations, we're creating policy manuals for homeownership, rentals, rehabilitation, addressing an aging housing stock, developing and conducting a series of educational outreach workshops, again, focusing on budgeting, credit, timely payment of mortgages, coordinate with the tax assessor to create a uniform system to identify affordable housing units on the municipal rolls. Again, this is to help to preserve units that we already have, and if for some reason that they should have a tax problem. Coordinate with the tax, coordinate with the tax assessor to create a warning system to identify potential affordable housing unit tax liens, and to investigate increasing avenues for advocacy and partnership. Two other items I'd just like to mention. Looking at the ordinances, one of the things that we hopefully is going to be carried forward, and although I'm going to use the word township now, it would be municipality, the township committee, now municipal committee, to implement the goals and objectives of the Princeton Community Master Plan has determined that affordable housing program should be established in the township now in the municipality in order to provide housing opportunities for lower income families in order to meet existing and anticipated housing needs for such persons, maintain a socio-economic mix in the community, provide a range of housing types dispersed throughout the community in a suitable living environment, and to satisfy the community's obligation to provide a fair share of the region's housing sources. I found out after doing this for a while that Princeton, and I even find out people really don't realize the diversity and the types of affordable housing that are in Princeton, more so than anywhere. I can go back to Griggs Farm, which was built some time ago. I believe there is only one 50-50 affordable and market community in the state, and I don't know where else, and that's Griggs Farm. And in fact, whatever, turmoil or whatever, however, at the time that it went to creating, it works. You have a community there that works and that the town has always maintained and should be proud of. With that, my associate Kate Warren also has a thumb drive I think she would like to pass out to everyone else that actually summarizes the entire program, numbers of houses, types of houses, types of the income levels that we've been able to compile for the town. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you. And
if I just might very quickly, it's a comprehensive look. As a board member, I try to gather and create a comprehensive look at the entire affordable housing program. So this was approved by the board for submission to you all, and at your leisure, you can take a look at it. If you have follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, we might have you come back and present it. And we don't have time tonight because we have so much, but it'd be great. I think my guess is that the public will be interested in seeing it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe? Do you want these back? The thumb drives back? You want them back?
No.
I mean, after we get the information, are they yours?
No, you can give them back to Christy. They're both on the board.
They're cute too.
Oh, Jenny, can you give one to Joe? Yeah, give one. Take one for Joe. Take one for Joe. I'll take one for Joe. Yeah, take one for Joe.
Good evening.
Hi, I'd like to welcome Leighton Newland from the Housing Authority.
Good evening, Mayor Lampert, President Miller, hi Kate, and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to present the highlights of the Princeton Housing Authority for the year 2014. My name is Leighton Newland. I am chair of the board of 7 people and happy, as Mr. McGowan said, to represent people that are committed to public housing in Princeton for the lower income bracket. Thank you again. I just wanted to begin by outlining the offerings of the Princeton Housing Authority. We have a total of 236 units located in 5 different sites. Those sites include Clay Street, Spruce Circle, Reading Circle, Maple Franklin Terrace, and Karen Court. There are a total of 126 units which are designated for family housing, and 110 units are designated for senior and disabled housing. Our waiting list has a total of 395 households, which include 172 senior or disabled families and 223 family units. Our waiting list for seniors and disabled is open all year, but our waiting list, because of the amount of numbers that we have on the waiting list for family housing, is only open during the month of January each year. The approximate waiting time for a senior or disabled unit is 1 year, and the wait time for a family apartment ranges from 2 to 5 years, depending on the bedroom size. More information can be found on our website at www.princetonhousing.org. I would like to first notate that the Princeton Housing Authority has achieved the designation of a high-performing housing authority, which only 30% of all New Jersey Princeton housing authorities achieve. 2014 is the 4th year in a row that the Princeton Housing Authority has achieved this designation. Due to the changes in HUD scoring, Housing and Urban Development scoring, the reductions in HUD funding and the overall economy, it has become more and more difficult over the past few years to achieve this designation. HUD factors in the Princeton Housing Authority's performance in the following categories in order to determine this overall score or designation. First is the financial condition of the authority. Second is the operations and management. Third is our capital fund, which is the monies we use that is designated to make capital improvements. And fourth, but certainly not least, is the physical inspection that's done on a yearly basis. The Princeton Housing Authority made the following capital improvements to its buildings and properties during this year. A new heating plant and hot water system for Spruce Circle, which houses 50 senior and disabled apartments. Roof replacement at the Reading Circle Family Section, which houses 40 family apartments. The Princeton Housing Authority continues to work collaboratively with the Princeton YMCA to offer after-school programming at the Henry F. Pinnell Learning Center, in addition to a learned-based summer camp program. The Housing Authority also continues to work collaboratively with the Princeton Senior Resource Center to offer various services and programs to our senior and disabled residents. We also continue to work with Enable Inc., which results in our Housing Authority having an on-site social worker based in the office at Reading Circle's community building. Major agenda items for 2015 include partnering with Princeton Community Housing in order to increase the number of affordable housing units in Princeton. Roof replacement at the Reading Circle Senior Section, 60 apartments, and/or bathroom plumbing renovations at Spruce Circle and Reading Circle. This is a determination that will be made within the next 2 to 3 months. Also, possible conversion from public housing to project-based Section 8, which is something that the Housing and Urban Development in Washington, D.C. has implemented, and if the decision is decided to go in that direction, it would provide a more stable funding base with predictable annual increases. It would exempt the Princeton Housing Authority from many HUD restrictions, which would allow our authority to apply for funding that it's not currently eligible for. It would also enable the Housing Authority to be permitted to borrow and mortgage property if needed for capital improvements, which we cannot currently do. It would also reduce administrative duties to a less HUD oversight, which would also save costs. Let me say I'm not an expert in this area. However, Scott Parsons, our executive director, is, and this is also something that will be discussed within the next year with the board and our administrative staff. Last but not least, we continue to provide quality needed services and achieve high performer status, and we expect to do that for our 5th year in a row. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the good work that the board does.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you.
And I want to say we're not engaging in our normal Q&A just because we have so many presentations tonight, but I have to say there's been a lot. I've been taking notes that have piqued my interest that I think we're going to want to have many of you back, if not all of you back, during the course of the next year to talk about some of the specifics that have come up tonight. But it's been useful for us to start writing down our list of things that should be on our list for 2015.
And Mayor, given that there are council liaisons to all of these, I mean, one way to do it would be to funnel through each of us, if we have ideas that relate to those on which we don't serve.
That's right. Okay. Without further ado, Ross Wishnick, who's chair of Human Services Commission.
So first, I'd like to acknowledge the members of our commission, starting with Heather Howard as our liaison. Leticia Fraga Nadler is the vice chair, John Heilner, Bobby Hackett, Laura Encinas, Stacy Mann, Elizabeth Bidwell Bates, Larry Spruill, and Tommy Parker. It's a good group, a very diverse group that we have on the Human Services Commission. So, the founders of our country and the stewards of our nation have spoken often about our being an inclusive and welcoming place. Writings that have started with "We the people," I'm not going to read the whole Constitution, and "All persons born here are citizens given full and equal benefit of all laws," the 14th Amendment, and "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses," the Statue of Liberty. They're all broad and lofty statements. They aren't always practiced as promised, but they are what we strive for. They are, in our small town, in our small commission, what gives us guidance, and the driving morality that all of us are entitled to dignity, and what we were thinking of when we rewrote the mission statement recently, to wit. Through advocacy, leadership, collaboration, the Princeton Department of Human Services helps to improve the quality of life of individuals in our community who are vulnerable, economically disadvantaged, or otherwise in need. Of whom are we speaking? Who are our clients? A little perspective, a few numbers, which are quite surprising, and for this we thank Ralph Widener. 20%, 1 out of every 5 households, defined as one or several people living in a single unit, earn less than $35,000 per year. There are approximately 3,500 individuals whose incomes are twice the poverty level of $11,670 or lower, and half of them earn half the poverty level or less. About 56.6% of the individuals living below the poverty level, poverty threshold, are white, non-Latino, 18.8% are Asian, 10.6% Hispanic Latino, and 8.5% are Black, African, and American. That's who we're speaking about. And so what has our small commission, led by Elisa Nera, done in 2014? Well, we created a subcommittee that focused on immigration issues and worked with outside organizations such as New Labor in New Brunswick to address some of the challenges that our immigrant and non-immigrant community faces. And on July 24th, 2014, here, we all witnessed a great moment when a number of landscapers came to the council meeting to support the Princeton Landscaper Registration Ordinance, which passed thanks to you by unanimous vote, making Princeton the second municipality in New Jersey to pass an ordinance regarding wage theft. We've created a great working partnership with Chief Nick Sutter and his police department to improve relationships with the minority communities and cooperatively held education events on a number of pressing topics, such as housing, immigration law, wage and hour law, and have also built and continue to build a rapport with the Latino residents. As you know, the League of Municipalities featured Princeton's model of building trust with immigrant communities at this year's last month's League conference, which Heather attended, Elisa attended, and the chief attended, and I don't know who else. And the mayor attended, sorry. Send Hunger Packing Princeton, founded by us in 2013 to address childhood food insecurity, distributed 22,000 supplemental meals during last year to 150 children pre-K through 5th grade, all of which paid for through donations from the community. This program has been a great success, and we've received valuable testimonial stories from families receiving this help. This past September, SHUP held a successful fundraiser event at the Community Park School. In 2015, we hope to expand the program to the middle school and find ways to continue to feed these children during the summer months. Summer youth employment. For 15 years, Human Services has provided paid employment opportunities to an average of 30 youth ages 14 through 17. This past summer, we partnered with Corner House and employed the services of 2 of their members to oversee the program. Bethany Andrade and Calvin Reed performed those duties, helping to provide an outstanding first work experience for the participants. Their oversight made eminent sense because they also provide mentoring for the same kids during the school year. Because of this continuity, we saw improvement in the program's performance. This year, we implemented a pre- and post-interview to measure outcomes and effectiveness. We worked with each participant for individual goal setting and even added a session on managing their finances. This will be a little like frick and frack because we work with the health department. So WIC, Women, Infants, and Children Clinic, is a nutrition education and well-being program for low-income families. WIC has been offered locally for about 15 years. This year, we learned that the number of WIC participants had significantly decreased, and that the Children's Home Society, the overseer of the program, was considering terminating WIC services in Princeton. As a result, this department worked collaboratively with the health department to increase participation and enrollment. Because of these efforts, enrollment has doubled, and WIC will remain here through 2015, and plans are underway to continue the recruitment. The Affordable Care Act. Princeton has been a leader in ensuring that its uninsured residents have access to information and resources for ACA. Since 2013, we've been working closely with Enroll America and have helped to coordinate local information sessions and enrollment events where residents can get free one-on-one assistance. In partnership with the Health Department, Enroll America, and the library, there have recently been 2 information sessions held and 2 enrollment events planned before the February 15th enrollment deadline. Community needs assessment. With strong support from council and focused leadership, the Human Services Department has taken on a prominent role in providing service to and advocacy for the underserved and hard-to-reach population in Princeton. Since 2013, Elisa, with the help of her dedicated assistant, Diana Alvarez Ferrero, have been intimately involved with conducting surveys and focus groups to assess the effectiveness of existing services, identify service gaps, and to determine the needs for new services. And it is noteworthy that the participants in this research reflect the diversity within our community. With this CNA final report nearly completed and the insight it provides, the department has a good understanding of the work that lies ahead. And so, on to 2015 key initiatives. working with local nonprofits to identify opportunities where collaboration can help expand services. To this end, the department will hold a series of presentations, working meetings, and workshops on the findings of the needs assessment with all identified community resources. Recognizing the scarcity of funding, the department will seek out funding sources across the spectrum to hopefully fund new programs and services or expand existing ones. Continue in-depth research and assessment of needs and services brought to light from Phase 1 of the needs assessment. Some areas of focus will be access to financial literacy services, job training and development, accessibility of food for the food insecure, education and training for low-wage workers and their employers regarding wage theft. Other areas will be revealed in Phase 2. And our involvement will continue with general assistance, Wheels Rodeo, which is done with the police department, distributing donated school supplies for the new school year, coordinating the distribution of donated holiday gifts, participating in Not in Our Town and Stand Against Racism, fighting for and supporting tuition equality, state legislation, and the publication of our Serving Princeton, which describes the events of the department quarter to quarter, hopefully. We are always vigilant and prepared to advocate for new initiatives that are supportive of our constituents. One of the goals when hiring a bilingual director was to increase contact and communication with our otherwise previously inaccessible community of Latinos and Hispanics. As a result of this trust building, the department has seen an increase in walk-ins and phone calls from this group for various needs. The most critical ones are in the areas of housing, whether it's the need for housing or facing eviction or other landlord-tenant issues. In addition, the department provides translation services as needed. And to be sure, the department continues to provide services to all in our community requiring same. The addition of our bilingual director allows us to increase our reach to the exclusion of none. I'll leave you with two thoughts. From Martin Luther King, all labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with excellence. And from Margaret Mead, I must admit that I personally measure success in terms of the contributions an individual makes to her or his fellow human beings. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ross. Wendy Jolly, Chair Corner House Board.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to us tonight. I'd like to read Corner House's mission statement. Through leadership, prevention, treatment, and outreach programs, Corner House promotes the health and well-being of Princeton area young people and their families.
Yep.
As they
Wendy, can I just interrupt you? Because Ross is taller. Just push the mic down a little bit. There you go.
Is that better? Sorry. Gee, I didn't think I was, but anyway. That's better. The well-being of Princeton area young people and their families as they confront substance abuse and other emotional issues. The Corner House Board, of which I am the chair, oversees the operations of all Corner House programs. The Corner House Foundation is a separate 501c3 which raises private funds from their direct mail campaign in the fall and annual benefits to supplement its grant writing efforts. This year's annual report, which I would like to refer to, I think everyone has a copy of this, and it has pictures, and it's a very nice thing that we just got done in November. And I'd like to highlight some of the things that are in this report. The student leadership programs consist of approximately 80 students from all 4 Princeton area high schools, Princeton High School, Princeton Day School, Hun School, and Stewart. The 4 leadership teams are the Corner House Student Board, the Teen Advisory Group, which is the TAG team, Project Gaia 1 and 2, which stands for Growing Up Accepted as an Individual in America. The students begin their service at the mandatory Corner House Student Retreat at Princeton University in August of every year. This is a 3-day session, and if they can't attend that, they can't be on one of the leadership teams, so we take it very seriously. The Corner House Student Board is comprised of seniors from these 4 schools, And they also serve on the Corner House Board and other municipal boards and commissions such as Human Service, Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance, and the Rec Department. In addition, they present parent workshops and plan alternative activities, including the All-City Dodgeball Tournament, which took place in November and was a huge success. The upcoming December 5th All-City A Cappella Night, which they've done since the beginning of the Corner House Student Board. And they run this jointly with the Princeton Public Library for teens only. The parents really would like to be there, but we don't let them. The tag team works with 5th, 7th, and 8th grade students at both public and private elementary and middle schools. They present approximately 14 workshops each school year and participate in the Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance. And many of these kids go on to the student board, as do members of Gaia. Project Gaia 1 and 2 present at 2nd, 5th, and 8th grades and high school, including the Rising Above Conference at JW Middle School. I think many of you have attended that, and it's an amazing event every year. This is for 8th graders. And Cranberry School also attends that because Cranberry students, of course, come to Princeton High School as 9th graders. The next area is prevention programs. Corner House's philosophy is that our oldest prevention program, which has been in existence for 25 years, is Academic Success for Today, which is AST, currently coordinated by Ellen Petrone, who has done it for many years. And this is a tutoring and mentoring program, and there are always a need for additional mentors, so if anybody here would like to do that, please see us. We would be most happy to accommodate you. Another group is STAR. It's a discussion group for middle school girls. The Girls Chat is funded by the Cranberry Municipal Alliance at the Cranberry School. Scholarships are privately funded by the generosity of community members for the outstanding high school graduating seniors in our leadership and outreach programs. And you can see, if you turn the page, a lot of our awards, the ones that we did last year. Treatment programs. Currently, there is no wait for services at Corner House, but in the past year, it could be up to 6 weeks to be seen. No one is turned away regardless of their ability to pay. Treatment philosophy. For 2015, we will be adding an additional intensive outpatient program which consists of clients attending a minimum of 9 hours of treatment per week, primarily serving our drug court treatment clients, utilizing our extensive group counseling offerings. This program is now 12 years old and is an alternative to incarceration. It's funded by the state of New Jersey. Corner House also, it should be noted, has offered bilingual services for over 21 years, which is pretty impressive. It also has the Employee Assistance Program, and in the past year, 3 times the number of employees have seen someone there. Outreach programs and outreach goals. Programs include advocacy for youth, which is 9th and 10th graders, and co-ed groups. The World of Work for Youth, or WOWY, which is for high school females. The Princeton Youth Project for high school males. And the students self-selected the same gender groups. This is something different. One of them used to be co-ed. 100% of last year's seniors had post-high school plans to further their education, and this is something we're very, very proud of. This is pretty impressive. Community programs. The Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance does such projects as these: parent forums, prom dress drive, the drunk driving enactment, and education flyers in local newspapers. 2015 agenda items include expansion of our clinical programs to include intensive outpatient service, as I mentioned, provide additional parent prevention and education programs, explore opportunities for a youth services board for Princeton, expand private funding opportunities through the Corner House Foundation, and update and revise the Corner House Policy and Procedures Manual. We are very grateful for all our private support in the community and also grateful to the council for your support. And one thing that I'm sure you're very aware of, as we are, Mercer County funding has decreased over the last year for our outreach programs, so that is of concern to us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite up Dick Nosker from Chair of the Recreation Board.
Do you have the handout in front of you there? Okay. For recreation, the first thing I wanted to mention is a couple of the areas that we think we're doing quite well at. The first one would be the pool, which is nice and fresh and new, and you can see the total number of visits shown there. And when the new pool opened, it jumped up by a very high margin from maybe 60,000 to roughly 100,000, and it's stayed right there. So we think that's been a big success, and we get a lot of positive feedback about it. The number of events number of programs offered, just keeps on going up, and it seems like the rec professionals keep thinking of new things, and people come to us with some ideas about running additional programs, and so it inches up, it seems like, every year, and the same number of staff people are managing to make this work rather well. The number of facilities that we're responsible for keeps on going up. And a good part of that is the fact that, first of all, we started to be responsible for borough items, and then we started to be responsible for more park-related things. That's being shared still to some degree, but we're trying to learn how to do that properly as well. Still a work in progress. Next, things that are not going so well, we must make note of the fact that the active recreation that we have in town is pretty weak, and it remains pretty weak. If you look at the last column under the page that heads not so well, you'll see that Princeton is pretty far behind. This primarily affects kids and the availability of fields. And so we're in a situation where coaches are always asking for opportunities to be at the fields, and they are limited because of what we have available. We do pretty well on open space, especially considering the fact that we're kind of landlocked and done out in town. And the other towns on this list that are in similar situations are also the ones that have less open space per resident. But there we think that we're okay. We're right about the middle. Next, and finally, as far as park maintenance is concerned, we're still definitely in the process of trying to learn how to do this new responsibility properly. We want to continue to take care of the things that we are doing now, mowing and the various items, trash removal and everything like that, without letting up on any of that. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. We need to identify additional resources to help us take care of the things that are new to us. We can see that, with all the trails that there are and the limited number of people who are really, they're just volunteers who have been doing these things, that we really ought to try to add to that and maybe do some kind of adopt a park, working with organizations, whether it would be schools or churches or whatever it would be, see if we can get up some interest in having people take a piece of something and look after it as a way of trying to keep things in good shape. And we hope that we won't have any more Irenes, which take down, thousands of trees, and there's no way for us to deal with that. And identify maintenance priorities for the open space and passive areas. This is still a work in progress, as I said. We're in our second year of trying to do this, and we definitely, have more to do, more to learn. I've included a couple pages which show what the facilities are that we're taking care of and how they've been growing by the year, and also the number of programs and events that we're doing, which also keeps on going up, which you could read as bedtime reading if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to welcome Kiki Jameson, who's chair of the library board.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for inviting us here. I'm here representing the board of the library, which has 9 members. There's 7 of us who are citizens. I'm joined by Audrey Gould, Ruth Miller, Pam Wakefield, Kevin Royer, Andrew Ehrlichson, Brock Barcone, and then the school district's representative, Principal Bob Ginsberg from JP, and Mayor Lempert. Let's start with the numbers. There are 32,500 library cards issued by the library. That's more than the number of residents in Princeton. 2,500 people come into the building every day. Through the course of the year, we have 1,700 programs serving all ages. There were 573,000 items circulated. The library is open 74 hours each week over 7 days, and if any of you have had a chance to stop in on a Friday night, you see that it's not what you expect at a library on a Friday night. There's also access to digital content, reference materials, streaming of movies, digital books and magazines. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So why does this matter? To me, to the other volunteers, and to the community? It matters because the library is a priceless public institution, right? It's a place that connects people with ideas and with each other, and it's free. It's one of the only free places where you can learn, grow, challenge yourself, and meet other people. It's open to everybody. We saw this during Irene and during Sandy. We found that the library was really a source of power. Now, some of it was actual electric power, right, where people went to charge their devices, but it's also a source of social power and intellectual power. It's a place to feel connected to people. It's a place where we can bring questions, and the library helps us provide answers. It satisfies our needs to understand, whether it's technology, literacy, or the complexity of modern life. And this library is arguably one of the best anywhere, certainly in the state of New Jersey. The ongoing support of the people of Princeton has made it such, and that's supplemented very generously by private fundraising, which provides about 20% of the library's budget each year, thanks to the dedicated and energetic efforts of countless volunteers. So our job at the library is to serve the needs that we know now exist and to understand, anticipate, and meet the evolving needs that are only beginning to be known. In 2014, we helped job seekers, students, new English speakers, and technology neophytes to access information they needed for success. We reduced the carbon footprint of the library by reducing energy use, switching to more sustainable sources of energy, and adopting practices that conserve resources. We upgraded technology to better serve users by providing faster wireless network, wireless printing, more capacity, more modern computers available. And we built on the promise of consolidation to maximize cooperation. One thing we're really proud of is a new partnership between the library, the town, and the public schools when we hired a shared network engineer. We're also with the schools sharing